welcome back to Pseudo Gameplay TV for another character analysis in Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3. Today's character of interest is Miles Morales, a relatively new Spider-Man that's made some pretty significant waves in recent years. For instance, at the end of this last year, 2018, most people are familiar with Miles Morales with his appearance in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that Sony animated movie that did quite well and was rather enjoyable. Now, a few things to keep in mind about Miles Morales is he has a pretty standard Spider-Man type kit, what you would expect to see from him, including superhuman strength, speed, and agility, the ability to cling to solid surfaces, a precognitive spider sense that kind of helps alert him to danger, as well as some wrist-mounted web shooters for shooting webs from his wrists. And in addition to that, those are some similar things that are shared with the Peter Parker variety and really any other Spider-Person that we've seen from the comics. But Miles is special in a few extra ways. In addition to the standard Spider-Man kit, he also possesses a bioelectric energy thread that can be produced from his fingers, as well as a Venom Strike and a Venom Blast. And finally, one of the coolest attributes that is unique to him is his camouflager, his ability to kind of render himself invisible, which is a really cool mechanic to see and actually plays way into one of his special attacks. Speaking of those, the ones that are included in this variety of the game all have the electric functionality to them, so it's pretty good for dealing that type of damage if you have some sort of challenge that specifically requires an electric component to it. The first of his attacks, which is available right off the bat, is the web shooter, where Miles will release multiple web blasts in the direction that the character is facing. This is one that you can press repeatedly to continue attacking, so one that can be mashed and just kind of used over and over again. The second attack that he has access to is the surprise strike. Now, this is where he does go invisible and then goes over close to an enemy and attacks them with a burst of electricity. This does have somewhat of an auto-target functionality to it, so you don't have to aim it, which is quite useful and interesting to use at the very least. My personal favorite of his attacks is this high voltage lines, where Miles will shoot a barrage of electrified webs in the direction that the character is facing. Now, even though the description here says that the damage is an F, it has a very, very wide range in where it applies and is incredibly efficient at cutting down mass groups of enemies pretty quickly. So I highly, highly recommend this, and as an added bonus, if you get it up to that final rank 4, it will add a shock element when combined with ally attacks as well. The fourth and final ability that he does have is the Venom Strike, where he will drive both fists into the ground and release a large sphere of electric energy in the area. So a lot of electric type attacks that can chain off onto nearby opponents for some pretty quick takedowns of some of the grunts that are most common to be faced off against. Now, in terms of the synergies that we have lined up, of course we have classic Spider-Man here, as he shares a lot of common synergies, as well as bringing along Drax and Iron Man for a few extra synergies with Spider-Man himself. But without further ado, let's jump into one of our Infinity Rifts and showcase just what Miles is like in this game. I think you'll quite enjoy him if you choose to use him. Now, Miles, like a few of our other webbed friends, does get the ability to swing around on his double jump, and he will even, from his aerial attack, kind of do a web shot down to the ground and then slam himself down on top of his enemies. Now, his standard kit has a lot of melee attacks that go through in a pretty bursty little combo. A 5-hit combo, actually, on his light attacks. His medium attack, or his heavy attacks, do have an electric capability to them, where he will kind of slam that web out in front of the area, the direction he's facing, and attack the enemies directly in front of him. Now, his web shot is one that can be kind of mashed repeatedly in order to use. It doesn't web up opponents like the standard Spider-Man attack does, but it certainly has its uses. Now the surprise strike, or the sneak attack, will kind of auto-target a nearby fighter. He renders himself invisible for a quick moment, and then pops up in front of the opponent and just will kind of knock him out if their health bar's low enough, that is. And it does seem that he tends to target the strongest opponent that is nearby. Or if you indicate that arrow, you may be able to influence slightly who he is attacking. Now, we've got the third attack, which again I said is my favorite. This is the high voltage lines, where he will just kind of put out an area of webs that do very well at controlling the damage output, and it cuts down grunts quite effectively. So I would recommend having this up as frequently as you possibly can, as it just racks up damage. And again, if you get it to a high enough level, it will add an electric component to your allies' attacks as well. Now his fourth and final attack that he has access to, the Venom Strike, you want to get closer up to some of your opponents where possible, and then he will slam down and damage any of the opponents in the area of effect, which certainly has its uses. Now for his all-out attack, if I can remain on my feet, he will give a very large area of effect, Venom Blast, which is certainly useful, especially if you're getting overpowered by some larger opponents. But the high voltage lines, again, they just crank out large area of effect type damage and are very useful for just controlling large areas. So if you've got a rather bursty fight you need to get through with a lot of smaller grunts, I highly recommend using this attack, as it just overpowers anyone who seems to be in the nearby area. And it even has an element of some stun to it for some of the grunts or the smaller enemies, where they find themselves unable to attack if they get caught in it for long enough. So again, just an incredibly efficient management of the area. And if you're needing to revive one of your allies, this is an excellent way to go about doing that, because it will put down some covering fire, if you will.
Ultimate attack. Venom Blast.
And it does his ultimate attack there does a fair amount of knockback and damage to even opponents with a stagger bar. So I have a lot of fun using Miles. You can even use his web in tandem with some of his other attacks, especially if those characters are caught in a little bit of a hit stun. But again, just an incredibly efficient attack that covers a large area and chisels away at your opponents. So that's Miles Morales. Again, really, really fun character to use and incredibly useful. So I highly recommend using him, as he's able to cut down a lot of those bigger group fights pretty quick with the use of that high voltage line. And he's agile as well, so you don't have to worry about getting too caught up in the fray with other opponents. But that's going to do it for this one. Let me know what you think. Be sure to subscribe to never miss a video. I have uploads daily, and we will be back tomorrow with our next video. So thanks for watching, and you have yourself a great rest of your day.